Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. That was said by Thomas Jefferson. Benjamin Franklin said, without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. Basically, you've got to move forward, and to move forward, you've got to do things that you've never done before. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is I don't know if you've heard, but the state prosecutors in Arizona that were trying that 75-year-old man that was trying to protect his property failed at getting a conviction, and they have decided not to try him again. Thankfully. He was tired of seeing illegals cross his property. He was protecting his property. Oh, but the guy was unarmed. You think that stops them from assaulting people? Take a look at all the crimes that these people commit. Take a look at Jose Ibarra, who killed Lincoln Riley. No, it is not for the betterment of society to try a 75-year-old man that is protecting his property, because not only was he protecting his property, he was getting the point across that these illegals should not be coming into this country. He was doing the job that the U.S. government should have been doing. Also, University of Texas in Austin got rid of 40 pro-Palestine demonstrators. Okay, they weren't pro-Palestine, they were pro-terrorist. I'm getting tired of these people go, oh, pro-Palestine. No, they're pro-terrorist demonstrators. These folks were arrested. People were complaining, oh, they use pepper spray and flashbangs. Okay, these are people that support terrorists. You don't know what they're going to do. If they worship terrorists, then they're more than likely going to use terrorism, which they already have. Look at all the Jews that have been terrorized in this country by these people. Now, the main topic of this conversation is this. Having a liberal agenda in the government is killing innovation. Now, I don't use that. If you look, what type of, what is your politics, and they give you this 4-box thing. No, I use a simple line method. I've seen this one also used. On one end is anarchy, at the other end is total tyranny. Because, quite simply, that's what it is. It is not this complicated thing. It's very simple. You either want no government or you want total government on both ends, and you're somewhere in between. Now, the best way to describe my politics, and I've said this before, is that I am a minarchist. I am not for total anarchy. By no means am I for total anarchy. I am for minimal government. Minimal government that you can afford. Minimal government that doesn't interfere in people's lives. Unless you're attempting to harm other people. If you're trying to harm other people, yes. I believe we should be paying the government to pay attention to what is going on. But you don't need a large government for that. Large government is when you start getting into tyranny. As a matter of fact, what really grew our government was right after Woodrow Wilson was elected in 1912. That was just a horrible election. Here was a man that had written and bragged about the bureaucracy of places like England. Okay, so he got elected and he said, well, they must want this, so he started enacting this. One of the first things that he did to start his bureaucracy up was to have the post office either get rid of or shunt aside the blacks that worked for the post office. He segregated the government, and basically, as a Democrat, he did what Democrats accuse the government of having in it, which is systemic racism. Now, you have that with large government. If you have large government, you have people that are not actually working. They're on the payroll, but they're not actually doing anything, so they have plenty of time to do nothing but assert their personal opinion. Most of those folks that are asserting their personal opinion are union employees. These are people who are voting Democrat. They're making sure that they're paying their union dues, and those union dues are going to improving the Democrat Party. Now, some of these folks may support some Republicans, but the Republicans that they're supporting are people like Mitt Romney. These individuals who are part of the Republican Party, but in no way, shape, or form want your freedom. Yes, Mitt Romney can do pretty good when it comes to business. I will give him that. He showed using a businessman's approach that you could fix an Olympics, well, a situation where the Olympics were coming to Salt Lake City. It was bad. And he came in and using a good business-like approach fixed it. Okay, I'll give him credit for that. But as a politician, he has done nothing that is really that good for the United States. Every now and then he does, but that's only because, well, he has other Republicans going, you might want to vote for this. I'm going to use an example. I'm from backwoods Tennessee. I've talked about this. I'm a redneck from Tennessee. Thus the title, Redneck Thinker. Used to be in Tennessee, along with so many other places in this country, you had doctors that would go and do house calls. These doctors were part of the community. They weren't outside the community. They were part of the community. And these house calls, they weren't always paid with money. These doctors were going to poor folks and making sure that they had health care. Now, what changed? Well, number one, doctors, like everybody else, because of the increasing greed of the U.S. government, had to start taking by law, had to start taking all their payments with currency. I say currency because basically that's what it is. They had to start accepting money. They couldn't accept food. They couldn't accept livestock. They couldn't accept barter. None of that. They had to start accepting money that could be reported and be taxed. That hurt the ability to do house calls and to see poor patients. But hey, the Democrats have a whole different outlook on that. Oh no, we need better insurance. No, it was better when there was a better way of doing things, such as the house calls, such as doctors being able to accept payments other than cash. The second thing that hurt doctors was the government having the programs that were set up for loans and similar things, loans, grants, those sorts of things, and even supposedly not for profit schools looked at that and said, we can make a profit. We can accept these students and they'll get student loans and grants and all of this stuff so we can raise our prices. It's been admitted this is all over the place. So now if you want to be a doctor, you're having to pay all this money back out. You can't afford You cannot afford to be as a doctor to take barter, food, livestock, any of that stuff now. You have to, and then take a look. Well, okay, the next third part's going to be that. But the loans and all of that made schooling so outrageous that it's made education a debt society, not an education society. And the third area that is affecting medicine is no tort reform. How many conservatives have you heard that have been trying to get tort reform? Now, mind you, on top of the fact of that I'm saying conservatives, I'm not saying Republicans. When Republicans get in office, they don't do anything. End of story. They don't do anything. They don't want to do anything because, one, they're too divided. You have liberal Republicans. You have quite a few moderate Republicans that might swing a little bit towards conservatives on some issues, but at the same time, they're wanting to get airtime. They want to get interviewed on MSNBC and CBS and all of these other channels. And they can't do that if they're a big conservative or if they start leaning conservative because they'll get attacked. It won't be a friendly environment. They don't want to be seen as the bad guy by the mainstream media. And then you have some conservatives. So you have conservatives who are wanting tort reform. You have a few others that are wanting tort reform, but it's primarily the conservatives. By not implementing tort reform, which is not big government, it's actually going, hey, we need our courts to be involved less in medicine and other areas when there are lawsuits that are straight up frivolous. I keep hearing folks talk about, oh, well, if you get hurt, yeah, okay, there are people that make a living off of suing people. Seriously, take a look at it. There's proof out there for you to find. There are quite a few people that go out of their way to sue to be able to make a living. By not having tort reform, these doctors are constantly having to worry about what they do. They also are now having to pay for malpractice insurance that they're paying high five figures to low six figures depending on the state that they are in. So every year they are having to pay what it cost you for 2 or 3 of your cars. Every year they're having to pay for this. And there are some hospitals that will pay the malpractice insurance. Imagine how much that cost with all the doctors that work at these hospitals. Tort reform is very necessary. Now, this may not seem like a way to help innovation, but doctors are going to find better ways to treat patients without having to use all of the weird medicines that have so many side effects, they're not going to be utilizing a system that is admitted by everybody to be being broken. The best hospitals in this country have always been non-profit hospitals. Not the for-profit hospitals, the non-profit hospitals. Those are the hospitals where the innovation is happening at. And even they are having to back off the innovations because they're having to worry about the lawsuits. They're having to worry about government regulations that have gone amok. Another area that showed exactly why innovation was being stifled. And we're going to go back to Barack Obama. Barack Obama actually did something that helped innovation, but by doing so, he exposed the government for what they were. I don't think he meant to. I think that he fell in love with the dream of John F. Kennedy. I don't know why I was about to say Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Sorry about that. But he fell in love with the dream of John F. Kennedy. JFK set the goal of going to the moon. Barack Obama had all these people talking about, oh, he was a new JFK. Well, the next step that could be seen, and somebody smart had to have told him this, that the next step for us in space was not NASA, because you can't get Congress to agree on NASA, number one, which is why he wasn't going there, because he knew there would be too much of a fight with Congress. Now, I'm not saying that NASA needed to be the end-all, be-all when it comes to space exploration, but he was told the next way to get into space in a correct manner is private corporations. This is America, after all. So, he went to the different departments of the government that were holding back space exploration via private means, and he had them stop blocking private corporations going into space. No, that money would not be better spent helping poor people. What would help poor people is lower the frickin' minimum wage so people can actually get jobs. Quit having government dictate every aspect of everything. And get back to having real companies, not major corporations that run the government. When you have small companies that can compete, aka you take a look at SpaceX. In the grand scheme of things, SpaceX is a small company. Blue Horizons, Jeff Bezos' company, even though they're not doing all that much, they are doing some things. In the grand scheme of things, they are a small company. Because you have to compare them up against Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and these other major corporations that are also trying to find ways to get into space. It took, and I hate having to be nice to Jeff Bezos, but it took Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos fighting to get up there. You also have the Virgin, the Richard Branson of Virgin everything. He puts Virgin in front of everything. He's also been innovating. It takes innovation to move us forward. I'm always talking at the beginning of every one of my podcasts that we have to move forward. Barack Obama showed that it was government that was preventing private corporations from going into space. For us to move forward in space with space program, you either need to have a massive government that is doing everything, or you need to have private corporations that are given the ability to be allowed to do it. The science to go to Mars, the science to go to Mars, think about this. That science may actually provide what is needed to actually clean the water in Flint, Michigan. Why? Because you have to have water. The human body has to have water. They have to have a way to recycle the water on the ships that are going to Mars. This is one of Elon Musk's goals. Yes, we can go to Mars. We can set up a base on the moon. We are in competition right now. Right now, China is trying to take control of the moon. You think I'm joking? Look it up yourself. They are trying to go to the moon on a permanent basis, and they're wanting to take over as much of the moon as possible. We need to get up there. Well, NASA's not going to get us there because it's been underfunded for decades, because it's not the sexy thing to talk about now. And it has been, in all honesty, one of our better diplomatic tools over the years. Our State Department ain't been nothing. I hate to tell you this, but it's a political tool in the belts of the ever-changing presidency. So, other than from 1980 until 1992, that's the longest time that we've had one political party in office, and that was the longest stable foreign relations time that we had in this country. Now, I'm well aware that there were some mistakes made in that 12-year period, but let me tell you, it was the most stable foreign relations time that we had in this country. Foreign governments knew what to expect, because Bush Sr., while he wasn't the same as Reagan, Bush Sr. still kept pretty much the same even keel as what was created under Reagan. There were flare-ups here and there, but it was the same response. For 12 years, it was going to be the same response. Well, after that, the only way that we could really keep diplomatic doors open with, say, Russia or other countries on a pretty consistent way was via NASA. And you think I'm joking with you, I'm not. Take a look. It's quite literally has been one of our most stable diplomatic tools. NASA was so stable and such an interesting proposal that even when Ahmadinejad, I think that's his name, the guy that was president of Iran for a while, he was even willing to openly oppose the thought processes of the Ayatollahs and say that he would be interested in seeing Iran go to space. That is the kind of dream that causes people to want peace. That is the kind of dream that causes people to realize that humans want to explore. Not every human wants to explore. I'm well aware of that. But human nature, there is something down inside of us. Take a look at how popular Star Trek, Star Wars. If you get rid of the political messaging, that's a dream for so many people. Babylon 5, Stargate, all of these space-based programs. This is a dream, and this is where real innovation will happen. We need to understand gravity better. Well, if we've got a flourishing space program, even if it's ran by private corporations such as SpaceX, you've got to figure out how to deal with gravity. Okay, there are multiple ideas on gravity. You talk to one scientist and they'll tell you, oh no, it's not possible to control gravity. You talk to others and they tell you we've just not advanced science enough. And you've got opinions all in between. And the reason that I will side with the folks that say, oh, we just haven't advanced our science enough, is because of what happened with Max Planck. Quantum physics is possible, or modern physics is possible because of Max Planck and quantum theory. He sat in a class and was told in the late 1800s, he was told that they had found all of physics that there was to find, that there was no more physics to find. This late 1800s. Well, one of the few things hadn't been found, and it was something that nobody thought was any big deal anyway, but he still wanted to know. He figured out he would look at the embers of, say, a match or charcoal or any wood, anything like that, and he'd go, I want to understand that. He actually went, I want to understand that better. The heat and the light that was coming off of that. By him studying that, he called it quanta. Now, I don't think that he fully understood what he had found when he was studying it. But a few years after he did that, there was a guy that had gotten his physics degree but was working as a patent clerk in Switzerland that looked at it, understood it all, and went, I've got some ideas. And he had a physics degree. It wasn't like he was just a regular patent clerk. It was just that being a patent clerk paid better than what he could find. And it gave him time to actually sit there and work on his ideas. This patent clerk's name was Albert Einstein. That was the theory of relativity that he came up with, the basis for our modern day physics, which is, by the way, called Einsteinian physics. Before that, the physics that he and Max Planck studied was called Newtonian physics, for Sir Isaac Newton. So we had pretty much covered Newtonian physics. Now we have Einstein's physics. But Einstein lived at a rough time in our world, a very rough time in our world. Plus, he was a Jew. Max Planck had invited him in not long after he'd come up with the special theory of relativity to come teach and research in Germany. Well, Germany had the Kaiser, and the Kaiser wanted what other nations had, but because Germany did not actually become Germany until roughly the 1850s, same as what we know now as Italy became Italy in the 1850s, they wanted to expand. And but instead of Italy expanding, Germany was the one that was the very militant one because they were primarily controlled by the Prussians, who had been a very militaristic country, very strong militaristic culture. And they took the actions of some extremists in Serbia and turned it into World War I. But scientists during that time, there was one scientist, an astronomer. Sorry, don't know where that one came from. There was an astronomer in England that wanted to prove, he wanted to both use science as a way to show that science was more than what it was being used for during that war. And because he was so fascinated with what Einstein had created, he set up an experiment. And he proved Einstein correct during World War I. And it made Einstein become even more famous because Einstein didn't want to be in the war. Einstein was a pacifist. Yes, he had been in uniform for a short while in Switzerland, but that wasn't him. Well, after World War I, you had an extreme hate going on there. And they call them right wing. I'm sorry, they are not right wing. These are folks that wanted a large, strong government. That is not right wing. As I said, you have anarchy to large government. Claiming somebody's right wing or left wing, no. If you want government, you're left wing. You're liberal. If you want government to take control of people's lives, you are not conservative. You are not right wing. You're either for tyranny or you're for freedom. End of story. It's little shades of gray in between. So these folks that everybody calls right wing started screaming that physics wasn't physics anymore. It was now Jewish physics. There was a difference between physics and Jewish physics. Or Judenphysik. And that was used as a way to hate people. Even though Max Planck, a very German, non-Jewish individual, started it all, that was what it became in Germany. And yes, Einstein stayed on for a little while, but even he got tired of the hate, so he moved to America. And this science started because the Nazi government demanded certain things from their physicists and their engineers. Yes, there was some innovation, but most of that innovation failed. It took a free country to start creating real innovation in this world for that war, which I'm meaning World War II. It took America, a free country, create the innovation that won that war. We don't have that ability anymore because government dictates so much of people's lives. They take from so many people with taxes, regulations. We aren't a free society anymore. We have some freedom, sure, but we aren't a free enough society that we have real innovation anymore. Our medicines, they don't want these pharmaceutical companies, unless they're going to have a profit that can pay for all of what they have to go through, they're not going to create the medicines. Real medicines, that is. Oh, sure, they'll create the Viagras and Cialises and they'll work to pervert medicine so they can make profits off of anti-cholesterol drugs, the statins. But we don't have real innovation when it comes to medicine. We don't have real innovation when it comes to most of the sciences. There is a possibility for us to do that with private control over space exploration, but that's our only ability. You have so many scientists that are talking about climate change without them actually paying attention to the real way that the climate changes, because they're paid by the government. They're not paid all that often by private venture. They're not exploring out on their own when it comes to science. These universities are being paid money by the government to basically corroborate what the government claims. Whether it's real or not, they're corroborating it because that's how they're getting paid to corroborate. We have liberal groups that are paying them to fudge numbers. You take a look at Harvard. Harvard has been, it was proven that Harvard has had so many professors that have lied about the facts. I'm pretty sure that it's the same across our entire university system anymore. We don't have real innovation in this nation anymore because government doesn't allow it, because it's not obedient. Innovation comes from us not being obedient, by us thinking on our own, taking those great leaps, such as going from the burning embers of a match to that being the spark that creates our modern physics. We have scientists that could do all of those giant leaps, but they're being held back. And it's because of our government. It's because our government is this big entity that overshadows everything in this world. You don't have to believe me. Do your own research. Take a look at what I'm talking about. We need real innovation, real leaps, not government-enforced doctrine, and you will see real innovation happen. Not this BR, take yourself out of this world innovation, but flying cars that people talked about in the 1950s. Oh, in the future, we'll have that. Now you've got, don't eat the wrapper. Are you aware I don't know how many of you watch Star Trek, but the teleporters on Star Trek, that is I forget the exact term, but it's something dealing with quantum physics. We actually have a small, very small ability to do that. Now, it takes a lot of power. I do mean a lot of power to do this. And it can only go from one side of a room to the other. Large room, but still, it's only from one side of a room to the other side of the room. And it's only something the size of a dime, and it can't be something that's alive. Quantum entanglement. There we go. That's the theory that created it. It's called quantum entanglement. Now, I haven't heard about that in decades. I haven't heard where they've advanced that. I can guarantee you I know why. Because, one, it requires a lot of power. I'm going to keep saying it that way because, really, it takes a lot of power. We're talking Tim the Toolman Taylor power here. And yeah, it's the government probably doesn't. It's we've grown afraid. Oh, terrorism. If we create a government, if we get government down to the core basics of what it should be, protecting this country without violating our freedom, we wouldn't have to worry about terrorism. We wouldn't have to have whistleblowers going, hey, the government knew that these people were training to do something weird. We told them, but because there's so much competition going on in the military or in the government because hey, we've got to worry about we want funding and we don't we the FBI and the CIA and the ATF and the DEA and all these different alphabet soup agencies want to be the leaders of everything. That's why 9/11 happened. 9/11 happened because we have a large government that doesn't pay attention to what they're getting told because it doesn't fit their narrative. It happened because we have a large government that is more concerned with watching the citizens of this country than they are with protecting the citizens of this country. And that is why we don't have the innovation that we could have right this minute. Because government keeps stepping on the throats of those people that could be changing the world. That is why we don't have innovation. That is a liberal ideal. Liberal ideals are at the very core concept is they want to step on the throats of people. They don't want you to have freedom. Not modern day liberals. Classic liberals, yeah. There is a difference between classic liberalism and modern day liberalism. But that's that shade of gray. There's a difference between the socialist of the early 1900s and the socialist of today. Animal Farm, 1984, was written by George Orwell. Look this up. George Orwell was a socialist. The man that created our modern physics was a socialist. They wouldn't even be considered close to being progressive today. The modern day liberalism. They wouldn't even be considered, they'd be considered at the bottom rungs. They'd barely get listened to. Modern day. Because what was socialist then would be considered moderate today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have a good day. If you liked what I had to say, like, subscribe, comment. I'm going to have my link tree at the bottom of this. If you're listening on Rumble, if you're listening on YouTube, I'm even got it on my Podbean. Though I might only keep my Podbean for another month, it's not doing me all that well, but I'm going to have to learn OBS before I do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a good day. I hope you are able to move forward in your life. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Have a good day.